We start. I just want to remind you to mute yourself and keep your cameras on, please, because this is an interactive event in the meeting format. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar organized by Europress. Please keep your mics muted and your cameras on, please, so we can see you who's participating. And I'll also ask you to rename to have your proper name in the window. This is for us to be able to know who was participating in the webinar. We're soon about to start. We'll just wait another minute to get everyone on board. Good afternoon. Last call before we start. Please mute your mics and put your camera on, please, so we can see who's participating. Please also rename yourself if you have an anonymous signature, so we know who's participating in this event organized by Europress. So it's now 2:02 Central European Time, and it's time to start this webinar. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gustav Talving. I'm the Executive Director of European Organization of Prison and Correctional Services. Europress is a member organization, and we have 36 members coming from the whole Council of Europe region. And the last prison service to join Europress was Ukraine, which we are very proud of to have now on our membership. Europress is not only a member organization, but we're also a bigger network of prison professionals connecting criminal justice professionals around Europe, but also globally. And we can also see this in the participation of today's event, that there is a big interest in what's going on in Europe and in Europress activities in general. Human rights is becoming more and more important, especially in the days we live in now. We can really see a need to underline the importance of fundamental rights, not only for prisoners, but for humans in general. But we think at Europress that we need to also provide support to our members and the prison community in Europe on guidance for better practices in alignment with the human rights conventions. We do this by this webinar, for example, activities bringing human rights into focus. We also just recently launched a feature in our newsletter. You can subscribe for our newsletter on europris.org, and in the coming editions of the newsletter, we will have a human rights spotlight focusing on different areas of prison practice which might be challenging in terms of human rights. And we released our last newsletter just a few weeks ago, and the first spotlight was on transgender prisoners. So I recommend you to look that up on our website and get some insights about that area. And this spotlight feature we are doing together with the University of Galway. So they are helping us with the, let's say, the evidence base for these posts. Today we have a broader topic, and that is human rights in prisons. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers, 6 speakers from different specialist areas. The program consists of 2 parts mainly. First, we have a plenary session with a presentation from the Center of Expertise in Prison and Probation in Switzerland. After this, the Council of Europe and Penal Reform International will introduce a new guidance document for the European prisoner rules. After this, we will have a breakout part of the webinar where you can meet and discuss specific topics with the 3 top-of-the-line experts in their specific fields. And I will get back to introducing the speakers later. We will end up in the plenary again at the end of these 2 hours to just summarize briefly and also make a poll, an evaluation of the event. And we would really like you to stay on till 4 o'clock to participate and evaluate the event together. Let me see. So for the housekeeping, I would also like to mention that the webinar is recorded, and we will try to record also the breakouts. So if you have ambiguities in selecting the right breakout session, you may also revisit our website later and watch the other sessions. So that's a positive thing. And if you want to ask questions in the plenary in this first session, you can direct questions in the chat to me and my team, and we will try to address them later during the session. And in the breakout rooms, the chat will be open, so then you can ask questions directly to the speaker during the session. I think that's it for now. If you have any technical issues, my colleagues Julia and Brody is also in the room, and they will try to help you out if there's any issues. And you can reach them via the chat, but also via email as you received yesterday. Okay, so let's move on into the actual content of this session. And I would like to introduce a very good colleague of ours, Laura von Mandach. She's head of analysis and practice development at the Swiss Center for Expertise in Prison and Probation. This very event actually is springing from a discussion me and Laura had a year ago, where she introduced me to a tool which they developed in Switzerland to assist prison practitioners in finding, let's say, the right regulations and soft law conventions to guide them in their work. And I found this tool very interesting, and it sparked the idea also to do a webinar focusing on these soft law. So it's delightful to have you here, Laura, at this webinar, and I would leave the floor to you to introduce this tool that I mentioned, and also your sort of ideas around it and how it can be used. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gustav, and hello everybody. I have the role a little bit of an icebreaker today, because I'm certainly not an expert in soft law, but I'm going to present you this very tool. And of course, the name of the webinar is Human Rights, and human rights are so key. They are inalienable. I looked it up, the word in English, so you can't pull them off. This is for sure, but the key question is, do you know about them, and how does they apply in a daily work in prison and probation? So I'm going to tell you a short story on how it came that we elaborated. In fact, it's not a tool, it's just a simple soft law overview to support practitioners in Swiss corrections, how we came to put something in place, and what are the challenges in line with them. Yes, in communicating, breaking it down, making it accessible for everybody in corrections. So I'm going to start. I guess you're seeing my screen. Here, first 2 words about who we are. We are the Swiss Center of Expertise in Prison and Probation, and we are sort of an enabler, very similar to Aeropris being an enabler on a European level. In Switzerland, we are a foundation, and we offer some key things to corrections, training and education. So if you want to be a prison officer in Switzerland, regardless where you work, in Geneva, Lugano, or Lausanne, you come to Fribourg, where I'm standing now, and we offer you a vocational training of 2 years. And when you pass all exams, you will be a prison officer. We also offer training, education for the middle management intervening in prison. We have further education for plenty of staff working also in probation. And we also have basic education we offer to the inmates in around 1/3, in around 30 prisons in Switzerland. We have a total of, impressive total of 90 prisons. And me, I'm head of analysis and practice development. So in my team, we promote exchange. We are also the liaison officer with Aeropris. We have some data, we monitor some statistics, and we do not research, but analysis. We get all findings of research and we try to put them forward to practice. As I told you, I guess, no, I didn't tell you, but you know, we are a federal system, so we don't have 16 states like our neighbor country, Germany, but we have 26. So a small canton, a small country with many cantons, a federal system, so 26 different correctional systems, cantons of different size, very big ones like Canton de Vaud or Zurich, and some really small cantons. And as you may know, we speak 3 languages, this dialect of the German dialect, German, French, and Italian. So this makes everything a bit complicated. It's well, of course, there is a richness in it, but it's also a challenge. So how did we come about putting in place an overview of soft law? So we have a sounding board. This is really like a powerhouse. It's called COCI. I'm not going to translate it in English. It's an expert group with the main players of prison and probation, and they asked us to elaborate a soft law collection. And do you see the whole screen? Okay. Yes. So the reason discussing with them was it's so important. I mean, soft law is so important, but there is this fact that many people don't know about them. So even in the sounding board, where you have these key players, somebody asked us, I have been told there are some rules called Bangkok rules. What are they for? So we realized that even like people in leading positions don't even know how they're called, the soft laws, which are key for corrections. So discussing with them was interesting, but the expectation, and we are often like victim of really high expectations, was please do produce a comprehensive collection of all soft law existing tackling prison and probation, and please put it in 3 languages with a search machine, and please also, Laura, it has to be up to date. So if there is any new recommendation, it should be published. Yes, in usual time. So there were discussing with my team, we realized, well, in fact, there is no unique definition of soft law. Even law experts, they don't agree on the same definition. And if you really would do something like a soft law collection, this is expensive, this is complicated, and how should it be made accessible, since you really have to do a couple of translations. Just having like the soft law here is maybe not enough. So as in many projects, we found a solution, but this solution is quite modest. And in fact, what we have now is an overview. It's a soft law overview, and this is what I'm going to present you shortly. It's a content-based soft law overview in 3 languages, which is open, published on our website. So I'm going to show you the overview right in a minute, but just to tell you how it's structured, we first have explained what is soft law. We emphasize that soft law is important in prison and probation. We quote the 2 main bodies of soft law, the European Prison Rules and the Nelson Mandela Rules. And then we dive into 7 topics which we agreed to be very important in Switzerland. So we clustered some soft law around some subjects, some themes. Here you see 4: security and safety. Of course, security is a key element on if you think about prison. Maybe also tackling probation. Safety too. Foreign nationals is a highly important issue in Switzerland, since we have in our prison population over 70% of inmates don't have a Swiss passport, so there are foreign nationals. Women, a group with special needs. Parenting, a subject came up a couple of years ago, when it's being also tackled by our Federal Office of Justice by a report. These are the 4 topics, and here another 3. Inmates serving long-term custodial sentences, even indeterminate sentences in Switzerland, is a key topic for Swiss corrections. Health, as you know, is everywhere an issue in many ways. So a very important subject. And of course, in the light of our mandate, our law, we have to tackle, promote the resettlement, the reintegration of people that are in prison and are going to leave prison. So the whole work of probation is of course key. So I'm going to show you, we clustered all those 7 topics, and in each topic you will see first we list the recommendations of soft law coming adopted by the Council of Europe, then from the United Nations, and of course we also have our national sources. The websites here, French, German, and Italian. We also did something really cool. Jean-Sébastien Blanc, who is going to speak to us later, together with our Federal Office of Justice, put in place like a short version of the summary of the CPT report to Switzerland. If you open it, you will see on every point listed in the report, on this summarizing report, we also quoted where exactly is it described by in the what is the soft law source. Yes, so that's it. We published everything in January. So here, where we are now, we realized there is quite a good frequency. People are reading, looking at this very spot of our website, but we still have to have a more closer look if it's useful. Maybe we have to adapt everything which is put in place. I realize that we might have a certain bias because we might have tackled more prison issues than probation issues. So this, I realized this with my team preparing this presentation. So we might and then we are very open for recommendations of any changes. For instance, if in our discussion you would think this will be cool to have it in English, we could also put it in place in English, this soft law overview. Of course, nobody is having too much time just to pass on our website. We still have to do more proactive communication on soft law, especially recent adopted soft law, by a newsletter, by a LinkedIn. Here there is still there's some need for us to be stronger on this proactive side of communication. Yes, and just as an information, as we do different things, training, education, we have training materials, we have the website, we have some analysis on a couple of issues, and we realize, and everything in 3 languages, so we realize there is a challenge of an internal consistency. So if we talk about something pre-trial, are we tackling the same soft law, talking to it in the basic training, in the further training at our website? This is maybe a bit a Swiss challenge. That's it. I'm already through, and here you will find this. I mean, I'm going to open the French version of the website because I guess there were more French-speaking people than German or Italian-speaking people in the audience. But you can find this link in the chat. And of course you can switch languages if you want. And as I told you, it's not there yet in English. So here you have this more introductory part stating the importance of soft law, what we understand by soft law, the key sources of soft law, and here in this like an accordion style. We have, for instance, for nationals, we grouped some key sources of soft law on this subject. And on the sidebar, the more recent published soft law on victims, a recommendation published in March, and here, extrait des recommandations du CPT. This was this key summarizing report we put together with Jean-Sébastien Blanc and our Federal Department of Justice. Yes, that's it. Maybe I go back to the PowerPoint. Here, in the end, my email address and the email address of Isabel Bauer, because in fact she is the lawyer in our team, and she couldn't make it today, but she's like the person, our focal point on everything called soft law. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Laura. It was a very interesting presentation and on time as well. Thank you for that. So far, we don't have questions in the chat as far as I can see, but I have a few in store for you. So you mentioned this project and it's very, let's say, inspiring, I would say. And it's something that could be useful on a wider European arena. But to start with, this was a project. Do you have resources to maintain this database and to develop it? Or do you sort of foresee any obstacles in that regard?
Well, we don't have many resources. And I have to admit that, for instance, like this most recent adopted recommendation, we found it by accident. So we really have to struggle because we have plenty of tasks. So in fact, like this monitoring role of being aware of what came up just recently, we're not there yet. But I think there is a need for us, so it's an imperative. We have to find time to do it. I don't know with whom I was talking. I think maybe with Dominic Lehner, who is a member of the expert group of the PCCP expert group, and we found out there is one link where the most recent recommendations of the Council of Europe are published. So we have to like fix it. It's a very primitive thing. We really have to. Somebody has to check at least every 3 months and look for everything. It's not falling down into our lap. So there is a need for chasing.
Yeah. I see there's a need for scanning the field, so to say, for news and updates. And of course, there is also the case law built up in the European Court. So it's depending on the level of ambition, of course, and which topics you want to cover. But I found it very useful. And I think Europe is more long-term, will be happy to collaborate to develop also a platform for the European level, also in English. So that would be an interesting project to work on together. Thanks so much, Laura. Let me see if there's any direct questions in the chat. There's a comment from Maya Kabelika, and that is about the recommendations of the UN Committee to the State Party for example, on the Committee on the Rights of the Child. Are they included in this material? Do you know that?
I would have to check. I can't open the most recent chat contributions.
Okay.
Could you put it in the chat so I can have a look in the whereas the other speak?
Julia, can you forward this question to Laura? And meanwhile, there's another question for Laura from Triona, one of the speakers of today, that this includes national standards. Is that correct? And that would be only Swiss national standards, supposedly. Is that correct?
Yes. We have a difficulty in using the word standards, but so recommendations and like guidelines which are in place on a national level or even on a regional level are also listed.
Okay. So a tool or an overview on the European level would, of course, exclude these kind of more national standards or guidelines, as you say. So did you have any comment on the UN materials or the Committee on the Rights of the Child at this point? Or maybe you can get back to that.
I have to look it up.
Yeah,
I have to look it up. What we also include, for instance, you will see if you check it, it's some more like easy language tools. For instance, there is this video on the Nelson Mandela rules I got from Jean-Sébastien Blanc, I think yesterday or the day before, a material with a PowerPoint. We also like want to share materials which you could use giving a lecture or giving training or for a small group. Because in fact, if you just click on the recommendation, there is this huge explanatory note, and until you get to what they really want you to do, it's not for a governor of a small prison. It's not thought to be like understandable for a frontline person.
Sure, and this is why I think this overview is very attractive, because it sort of translates the legal language into practice, and that is really what Europris members and other professionals need on governor level, or even on, I would say, a senior management team would also need that kind of translation. So I think it's highly valuable. Thank you. We will continue with the second presentation. And we also have with us today Joana Kashi from Council of Europe and Triona Lenihan from Penal Reform International. And together they have developed a guidance tool for the European prison rules. And these extensive rules recently revised, and now we have let's say, a helpful booklet to assist in implementing these rules. So I leave the floor to you to introduce yourself and the new tool. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all of you once more. I am in charge of the European and the Council of Europe joint project, the European National Preventative Mechanism Forum. And we are here today not to speak about the project, but this joint guidance document that we have developed with PRI in the framework of this project. In the project, however, we are targeting the national preventative mechanisms, but we hope that this guidance document reaches out to other stakeholders. Can you hear me? Because I have an echo. Okay. Sorry. So the project aim is that through their monitoring, the NPMs, through their reporting and on different places of detention, they issue recommendations and make normative proposals to improving the treatment and conditions of persons deprived of their liberties in different places of deprivation of liberty. The European prison rules are, of course, one of the main documents that we use, and they have been revised 4 times since their existence in 1973, and most recently on July 2020, where they reflect the evolving needs of prison administration, prisoners, and staff of the prisons, and the different traditions of imprisonment in different Council of Europe member states. To this extent, the rules should be viewed as dynamic and living rather than set in stone. And with this in mind, and in view of facilitating their understanding, in cooperation with PRI, we decided to develop the short guide, which was published in 2021, and now the full guidance document on the EPR. The EPR set out standards on the management of prisons and the treatment of people, and to other types of correctional facilities. We include here penitentiaries and penal colonies, for instance. The guidelines, as strictly drafted, pertain to the treatment of individuals who are detained in prisons. However, due to the wide interpretation and wording used in different Council of Europe member states, this also encompasses other types of places of deprivation of liberty. For instance, this could apply to people with mental health conditions who are awaiting their possible transfer to psychiatric hospitals, but also to children permitted to remain with their parents in detention, or immigration detainees, for instance. In such cases, the rules will provide these people with equal protection. The rationale behind this guidance document is that while the EPRs are well known, as the Swiss example before just mentioned us, there is a need to disseminate and communicate them further. It is critical that the MPMs, but also other stakeholders and practitioners, use the updated rules, including national, regional, or international bodies. As it offers practical guidance, the document can be used as a reference document and as a resource for reviewing legislation, developing policies, and training. Again, the Swiss example before was excellent on that. And anyway, without going more, I will leave the floor to Triona to present it more to you, but I just wanted to say that you can download it for free in English, unfortunately, only, either on the Council of Europe website or on the PRI, and the links, I think, will be shared later by Europress. Thank you.
Thanks, Johanna, and yeah, thanks, Julia, for sharing the links in the chat already. So yeah, I just want to kind of follow up on what Johanna said. I'll try to share my screen again, just so you can see the document if you haven't already clicked through. Can you see it? Great. Yeah, so I'm the Policy and International Advocacy Manager at PRI. I'm joining from London. Lovely to see you all. Lots of familiar faces on the call today, so I won't go into detail about PRI. I'm sure most of you are aware, but we've had this very collaborative project with the Council of Europe, as Joanna mentioned, to really try to help kind of disseminate and provide the sort of practical interpretation and support for implementing the rules that has been discussed already today. So the guidance document, I guess, in terms of its purpose, is really aimed at more broadly sort of everyone working in and for prisons and with detained persons in Europe. So that's across kind of legislators, policymakers, prison authorities, monitoring bodies, as Johanna mentioned, and so on. The research included quite a detailed desk research, but also importantly, consultation with lots of practitioners and civil society, so that we could gather a lot of the good practice examples that are included throughout. And those are really intended to sort of illustrate in practical terms, you know, what have some of countries been doing already to implement the rules, and kind of help to generate ideas and inspire other solutions and ways of approaching implementation. And I see we also have Vicky Praise on the call today, who also worked on this and did some of this research. So hi, Vicky. In terms of the sort of how it's laid out and structured, it goes through 9 thematic chapters, which bring together the rules relating to those broader themes. And this more or less follows the structure of the rules themselves, with a few exceptions maybe. So you can see them here, covering different categories of prisoners, admission, allocation and accommodation, hygiene and healthcare, contact with the outside world, prison regime, prison management, safety and security, and research and public awareness raising. So within each of these sections, then it brings together the most recent knowledge and experience, and these good practice examples and any other relevant standards. So whether that's at the regional or international level. And this is probably the most important point in a way in terms of today's discussion is that in Europe, as well as the European prison rules, we have this, range of other soft law standards and guidance that we've heard a lot about already on the treatment of people in prison and prison management. So some of these, I guess, most notably maybe are all of the other recommendations adopted by the Committee of Ministers. So we have things like the European Code of Ethics for prison staff. We've had recommendations on foreign nationals in prison, children with imprisoned parents, child-friendly justice, and so on. And then we also have the extensive jurisprudence from the European Court on Human Rights. I'll maybe stop sharing this as it's maybe slightly less relevant. And yeah, the court has really published some very useful tools, like its guide, which analyzes and really sums up all of the case law under different articles of the European Convention on Human Rights relating to prisoners' rights, and that was updated last year. But it also has lots of fact sheets that bring together case law of the court on issues, so like health-related rights of people in prison or detention conditions and treatment. And it has more thematic fact sheets with examples of measures that have been adopted and reported by states in the context of their executing the court's judgments. So there's one on conditions of detention and cases on Article 3 on torture and ill treatment. So that includes things around overcrowding, healthcare, reintegration, and so on. And they also published another one this year on life imprisonment, which includes conditions of detention for people serving life sentences. So as well as sort of all of this body, we also have all of the reports and recommendations of the CPT, the European Committee for the Prevention of Torture. And these are really valuable because in their sort of prison and country visits and work with authorities, the CPT is really sort of unpacking and applying the standards against real life situations. So their recommendations give very context specific and very practical guidance. And all of that feeds into also their kind of more general regional recommendations as well. So there's really already a lot regionally in Europe. And then in addition to all of this, we have the international standards that have been mentioned that are adopted under the UN framework, which of course also apply in Council of Europe member states. So the Nelson Mandela rules on the standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners and the Bangkok rules on women in prison. And I probably should say, of course, the PRI has also published similar guidance documents on each of those UN standards. So they're also on our website. You can find them for the Nelson Mandela rules published with the OSCE Human Rights Office, ODIHR, and on the Bangkok rules with the Thailand Institute of Justice. So we have short guides and these more comprehensive guidance documents as well. And so there's so much synergy really between all of these soft law standards, and definitely significant overlap, not least I suppose because at least at the regional level, but also internationally, many of them have informed each other and sort of build on each other. So we've seen over the years how the EPR have had an impact not only in reform of national laws or as a basis for complaints against prison administrations, but they're also regularly referred to by the CPT in its country reports. They're also cited by the European Court in its judgments in, I guess, what's been seen as a sort of hardening of the soft law standards in that they're being applied by the court. And that's been noted by one of the judges of the court as well. And equally then when the prison rules were revised in 2020, they incorporated much of that sort of development in thinking and standards around prisons and treatment in prison that had been developed in Europe and beyond since the previous revision. And I know Dirk van Zijl-Smit is with us today, so I hope he won't mind me quoting him on this. But he's previously referred to this as a sort of a virtuous circle with the CPT and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and the European Court on Human Rights, all kind of developing new insights, which in part at least, led to the most recent revision of the rules. But there are also, I guess, some notable differences between some of the standards, particularly in relation to solitary confinement, for example, maybe differences with the Nelson Mandela rules and the CPT. Both specify a maximum number of days, and the EPR, in contrast, do not. And there are other differences as well, maybe, but I know we have the breakout session on that later, so I'll leave that discussion until then. But another quite notable difference, I guess, is in relation to women. So the European rules require specific gender-sensitive policies and positive measures to meet the distinctive needs of women, which was added in the 2020 revision, drawing on the Bangkok rules. And also provisions around childbirth and protection of women in prison from abuse, and providing access to specialist services where they're needed. So those rules, of course, all align with the Bangkok rules, but they are far more limited and less detailed. And there's definitely scope and need for a dedicated standard or recommendation on women to supplement the EPR in the way the Bangkok rules do to the Mandela rules at the international level. And that's something that PRI and others as well have called for and would certainly support. So in the meantime, in the guidance document that we've produced, we have tried to specify sort of which are the rules under the EPR, but that, of course, you know, it should also be considered together with the Bangkok rules, which equally apply in Europe. And so those really provide more detailed guidance on the implementation of this kind of more general provision for gender-specific policies in the EPR. And that's the approach, I guess, we've taken really throughout the document on all of the thematic areas. So yeah, we invite you to read it and use it and share it with your colleagues or networks, however it can be useful. And do also get in touch with us with any feedback or thoughts. I think we're speaking on behalf of both publishers, if I may. But yeah, we're very open to ideas and opportunities to help disseminate the rules and support their implementation. So to get in touch. I'll leave it there for now, but I think we have time for probably some discussion as well.
Thank you so much, Joana. Very useful guidance tool, I think. And it also, as mentioned before, sort of addressed the need for breaking down these regulations into understandable and also not only understandable, but also applied examples. So that's a very nice feature, I would say, of this guidance tool. So in a way, I have the same question for you when it comes to sort of monitoring and updating. Now this regards a specific legislation or soft law, piece of soft law, but still there will be new examples of how it can be applied. So how do you intend to update or come with new additions? Is that in the plan or?
Yeah, I think, well, we've had experience of that already with our guidance document on the Bangkok rules, for example. So that was published soon after they were adopted. Well, I think it was published in 2013, maybe first. And in 2020, we went through a revision process of that to update it and include a lot of more recent examples. You know, in that time period, there were so many more examples of good practices and initiatives that go towards implementation. So that was a really, I guess, satisfying process, because we could also see the success of the rules in that, 10 years or so since they had been adopted. Of course, a lot more to do, but that was, I think, a positive process. But it was also a significant undertaking. So yeah, we needed a dedicated project and budget for that, significant time, of course. Part of it, because it's part of our daily work, we're coming across these things, we're collaborating with Europris and with other organizations and prison services. So a lot of it are things that we're anyway aware of, but it's just having the capacity or the ability to update the tools. But I think what will be a very useful use also is in kind of supporting, trainings or ongoing initiatives. And I think in that sense, it has a longer shelf life in that those are, things that you can add in with kind of additional things that come along during those times. So if, you're developing a training, you would still be able to use, much of the document and then add in what the other more recent examples, that we've collected in that time. So I think it will be part of our broader website, maybe, rather than being in the PDF. I think as time goes on, we'll have more and more things, perhaps in the sidebar or whatever, that will link to also more recent kind of updates and add-ons. And hopefully then, if it's in 10 years and there's a lot to add, then hopefully we can do the full revision as well.
Brilliant, thanks. Sounds like a good plan. Before we proceed and open the floor also for questions, I would just like to mention that Europress expert groups provided also a few very practice-oriented implementation examples of 3 recommendations from Council of Europe, and you can find them on the Europress website under resources. Those are the recommendations regarding children of imprisoned parents, education in prison, and foreign nationals in prison and probation. So those 3 recommendations can also be, let's say, tracked and let's say visualized here with examples from our members. So it could be a helpful tool in these 3 areas. Okay, so let me see. There's a question here for you, Triona, I think. Does the guidance consider spiritual and pastoral issues? For instance, bereavement and childhood trauma are significant issues in those affected by imprisonment.
Sorry. Well, I guess trauma and would be more like included under healthcare, I think, and sort of approaches and specialized approaches, and maybe also under the special categories. I'm not actually sure about the spiritual. I'll have to have a look and maybe put it in the chat after. But certainly I think also on the trauma-informed care, I think the Bangkok rules are also more descriptive on that. So there's probably additional guidance in that one in relation to women.
Thanks. So